Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. I want to start off the third round with Mr. Krishmal Varanasuri, attorney at law. Krishmal, interestingly, you heard the remarks made by Mr. Varanasuri, President's Counsel. He said that a B report is to be published or filed in court with regard to what happened with regard to the bond scam and based on the recommendations. But we are well aware that a B report has to be filed by a police officer. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, Krishmal.
It's filed filed by the police, but
But if that's the case, which police officer is going to file?
So if that is the case, it has to be CID. Yes. But now, I am not a criminal practitioner, and I have all the due respect for the President's Counsel who have been practicing criminal law for a long time. But I beg to differ on a certain angle. With my limited knowledge of criminal law, I don't know why we have to go back to a B report stage and a magisterial inquiry now, when a commission of inquiry has gone into the matter and recorded evidence which can be used in a prosecution, and in fact have recommended the Attorney General to prosecute. Now, if you look at the wording, they are saying the AG, the Attorney General, must take action against Arjun Mahender, Aloysius, Kasun Palsina, CBS. That's what the report says. So I don't quite know why we have to go back to B reports. I'm not going to go any further on that angle.
I think in 2008 there was an amendment.
Yeah. So perhaps Mr. should elaborate on that in his turn. But I really don't. I hope that we don't go back to another 4.5-year magisterial inquiry under a B report to inquire into the same facts that have now been inquired and ascertained and the evidence recorded. If that is so, then let's amend the law, or as His Excellency the President says, if new laws are required, let's make new laws to make sure that these prosecutions that have been recommended by the Commission are carried out expeditiously. That is where I stand. Right?
Krishmal, when you look at the statements that are being made in political fora at present, it seems all this is targeted at a particular date. That's the 10th of February elections.
To cross over February. This is what I was trying to. All these cardboard Santos are now shouting because the report is coming out. They think that the report is having a detrimental effect on the election campaign. That's why some of them went to the Commission of Elections and asked whether they could keep away the references to the Bond Commission and the report until the elections are over. You follow? You must take all of this in one scale and weigh it, no? Right? So then, now that they are seeing that some detrimental effect is being caused to an election campaign of one party, the cardboard Santos have arisen from that party and are trying to attack the President, the commissioners, trying to say civil action. We have money that, we can set this money off against that money. All of this coming out with the election at hand. Now, I am asking, particularly His Excellency the President, who today made that statement in front of the whole country, we still would like to confide in you and believe in you, because we found you to be an independent candidate at the time. You came as a non-partisan candidate at the time, giving us leadership at a time when the country needed someone to lead us to get rid of a despotic, nepotistic, favoritism regime, which was bordering on a dictatorship. Now, I would like, or me and a lot of people who rallied around you in January would like to see you now getting back to that non-partisan first citizen of this country who wants to recover our monies back for us from whomever it is who has squandered. That's where I stand.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krishmal Varanasuri, attorney at law. I, in fact, wanted to move towards Mr. Hemantha Varanasuri, but because of the fact that you mentioned about the former regime, I want to take a cue from that and move my attention to Mr. D.W. Gunasekara, former chairman of COPE and strongman of the former regime. Mr. Gunasekara, isn't it a pity that this government was appointed to bring in good governance, and they've fallen into the same category that the people did not want this government to follow on? Isn't it sad?
Political culture.
This happens every time in Sri Lanka, unfortunately.
No, it's coming on for some time.
What must the people do, Mr. Gunasekara, in a situation like this? What must the people do?
This is a very difficult question to answer, but people should, they must experience by themselves. I think in the course of, now, you wait and see, during the now, I felt it, that is why when I prevailed upon Mahinda Rajapaksa not to go in for election and 2 years ahead. And I gave all facts and figures. I mean, not my imagination, but based on scientifically and evaluation, I said impossible to win. But all his advisors, I was all around. And even Maithripala was there when I pointed out. Because I felt, because I made a scientific analysis, no doubt that the trends are there. And people, I knew, that is why there was the shift from even from left parties also towards that January 18, from the SLFP certain sections. So that basically those shifting of trends was a matter that I understood before the election.
Mr. Gunasekara, you were against the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, I recollect. You were against the 18th Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, we were against, but what happened was my party took a decision by smaller majority. So
no, I recollect because I interviewed you.
I announced that in part of the House.
Yeah, I interviewed you
but
just
within
before.
3 months, I must say, I went back to the Parliament and said, we reversed the decision.
That was too late.
I said, I self-critically accepted that we made a mistake.
That was all too late, Mr. Gunasekara, unfortunately.
Yeah, too late, no doubt. But anyway, mine, not to mine, the collective, as a party, I can't.
Mr. Gunasekara, because I recollect interviewing you right after your party voted for the 18th Amendment of the Constitution at your residence down at Tulkote. And you said something very interesting. You said that this government is corrupt, no doubt about it. That is the former regime, Mahinda Rajapaksa's regime. You said about the issues that took place at the central bank at that point. You said these have to be investigated.
2008.
Absolutely. Now you're looking at a situation where this
2008 and 2014.
Absolutely, yes. When I interviewed you was in 2014.
No, that is what the commission report.
Absolutely. So, Mr.
That 2008 and 2014. That is
so there was issues in the central bank even at that time.
As far as I am concerned, I know there's a difference between the two periods.
Yeah.
2018 and 2014, if you analyze all the bonds that were purchased, they were under direct system. 90% of the direct system. And 90% from the state sector.
No, but we're talking about these two words, conflict of interest. Now, we had the former governor.
No conflict of interest. I don't see conflict of interest as far as the first period is concerned.
No, but you had the former governor, Ajit Niwad Kabral's sister, as a director.
That yet to be proved. I can't make my comments.
But that is there in the company history.
That's a fact.
That's a fact.
So that has to be investigated.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr.
Gunasekara,
former chairman of COPE.
Yeah.
I now move attention to Mr. Hemantavaran Kulsurya, President's Council. Now I get back to the B report issue that we brought in.
I believe I must correct my learned friend.
Mr. Varasurya gave respect to you when he mentioned
what
that.
We wanted
what happens
was the government, the CID, to file an initial report naming all the suspects. Then move the court to issue a travel ban on them. Already this has been done as far as Arjuna Aloysius and Kasun Palaseni concerned. They have filed a B report. They have obtained a travel ban on the basis of destruction of evidence. So there are so many other people who should be brought to court. And if then also at the same time all the properties that have been purchased and all the monies, the bank accounts could be seized by the magistrate court. Now you can't go to the High Court and do that. There is no magisterial inquiry. Once that is done, then they have to issue a warrant to arrest Mr. Arjuna Mahendran. Then thereafter, with a very short time, they have produced all the suspects in the magistrate's court, either remand them or bail them out. Then the High Court indictment will begin. All these cases, the magisterial inquiry, there are no magisterial inquiry. Magistrate would only assist the prosecution under Section 124 of the Criminal Procedure Code.
How long will that take?
That won't take. That can be done now. If the magistrate files a B report, if they file a B report tomorrow, the magistrate will impound their passports and make an order tomorrow itself.
It won't take one day.
That has been done even
Every day it's being done. Every day. Then afterwards, the people then the travel ban. Ex parte, without anybody you can get a travel ban. Thereafter, all those people can be produced in court if the evidence, and then the prosecution can make an application of remand or bailed out. That's all. That won't take, if with all the evidence available, this is what I said, that this should be done before the end of this month. And so then no inquiry. The matter is now there is evidence that has been recorded. On that basis, with Dappula Rivera and Mr. Jasanta Godagoda helping this committee, I believe the indictments can be filed. And also the bribery commissioner.
Yeah. But Mr. Varadarajan, there's a problem here now. You said that all this is very simple, to impound someone's passport. But why wasn't it done in the case of Arjuna Mahendran?
Precisely. I said this 10 months ago. I said this in that program. In fact, I was questioned I said you must arrest him.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Hemantavaran Kulasuriya, President's Counsel. Again, we need to respect the panelists here, but the views that they're expressing are purely theirs. And I now move to Mr. Risiripala Thenlakon, who is a senior bank, also civil rights activist. Interestingly, the recommendations and the conclusions of this report says that on the 26th of February, when there was a breakfast meeting, there was no mention about raising funds. And however, Mr. Arjuna Mahendran, speaking to us, to News First, just weeks after this expose took place, says that in the back of my mind, I knew there was a requirement of the government. Now, I'm trying to think, is Mr. Arjuna Mahendran, who's a former governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, trying to mislead the public, or is he a soothsayer to know that what's happening in a few days or in a few months from now?
Mr. Arjuna Mahendran was not trying to, he was trying to move with the trends, you know. At that time, the issue was little different, so he took up one position. And at the Commission of Inquiry, if you remember correct, Samir, what the position he took was that he had a letter issued by the former Minister of Finance certifying and confirming that he was asked to raise this money and that money was required. So you can see how they have been twisting and turning. But the worst scenario is the Prime Minister himself on the 17th of March 2015 in his statement to the Parliament, he said there was an emergency requirement of 15 billion rupees. 17th of March 2015. I remember it very clearly.
So that is what I'm saying now. This was revealed in March, but 26th of February,
yes,
there was a breakfast meeting.
Yes.
And it's all happened because, how did it happen?
No, you see now, the 17th March is after 26th of February.
Yeah,
that's why I'm telling you how this happened.
Yeah.
Now, he confirmed in Parliament, he said that there was a need for 15 billion rupees.
So you're trying to say that the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka was trying to defend clearly the former governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka.
He endorsed what Arjuna Mahendran said up to then. Now finally at the inquiry level, Prime Minister took up a different position, entirely different position. He said no, there was a need for funds, but then that was not discussed in this way. So I mean, you can see how they have been twisting and turning as time went on.
But there was also a letter that was discussed by the former finance minister about a fund requirement, Mr. Thenlakon. Now, what is this letter that
he was trying to help Mahendran to stand by his statement that this meeting was held on the 26th, to justify the stand that
an undated letter.
No, the reason for the letter is, you read the evidence of the former Secretary of the Treasury and the present Secretary of the Treasury, both say, because these things are being decided by the Secretary, even the Minister is not...
they are not...
There was no such need.
Because they want some immediate, because there's a liquidity problem, immediately they ask for some money. both secretaries, former secretary and the present secretary, both said this was not necessary.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your thoughts. In the third round, I open the floor for questions. So let's start off with Nadim.
Thank you, Shamir. Krishmal, I'd like to come to you on this question because you were talking about, we were talking about earlier about whether the Attorney General's Department can independently and withstanding political interference carry this forward. There are several questions that arise in my mind as a citizen regarding my faith in the capability of the Attorney General to act as public prosecutor as well. Chief among these, of course, is that there is a notion among the public that, and even with the second COPE report, which was to be referred to the Attorney General's Department, there was a notion that there was a requirement for a presidential commission because the files would gather dust at the Attorney General's Department. There is also what was said by Mr. Hemantha Surya just a little while ago, where he mentioned that on Faraz's show Newsline, he said this report initially went to the civil branch at the AG's department, and Mr. De Rivera and Mr. Kodagoda were only co-opted later on, much later on. Today was the disclosure that Mr. Surya made. All of this has somewhat weakened my faith in whether the Attorney General's Department can independently, withstanding political pressure and interference, carry out this process, and whether there are forces at work within the Attorney General's Department that are seeking to subvert this process. Do you think it's high time that the duty of public prosecutor was separated from the Attorney General's Department?
Nadim, excellent question, and I do not blame you at all for being a media man and a civic-minded citizen for raising that question, because whilst I will certainly not try to second guess as to why the Honourable Attorney General does what he does and decides on the procedure of law that he must follow, I too had questions. Remember at the time when the Honourable Prime Minister came to give his evidence at the Commission, why gentlemen like Dappula and Yasantha, who have been conducting the prosecution, who knew the case inside out, who have been studying the case for so long, why on that day the Attorney General had to go and ask questions? Because surely the other two gentlemen, being senior enough and having known the case, would have known the case better. So I too had that question at the time. Now coming to your present question, subject to what Mr. Varnakula Surya said being correct about Yasantha and Dappula now being co-opted into the team, what I saw a couple of days on the news broadcast were the Mrs. Fernando and the Honourable Attorney General and Mr. Pulle, and they were part of the delegation that met His Excellency the President to discuss the bond report. And remember, that's before, just after which he went to Polonnaru, I think, and made the statement, I finished my second operation and come, the operation number 2 or whatever. That's operation number 2. So at that operation number 2 meeting, I only saw these persons that I mentioned before at that meeting. So now we are told that there is news that Dappula and Yasantha from the criminal branch have also been asked to look at the criminal prosecution angle of it. Now, if at all, I'm saying if there is any doubt at all in His Excellency the President as to whether this can be done or whether this will be done, I am saying it is not too late to even explore possibilities. If certainly we are discussing changes of regulations and law. Now, in England, for example, prosecutions are not only done by the state. The CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, on behalf of Her Majesty, retains the chamber that I did my pupillage in. We were retained to conduct criminal prosecutions. And sometimes in the same chamber, that's how independent that system is. Sometimes in the same chamber, there's another chambermate who's defending the same case. Because they feel that the law will be done in that court of law. Yeah, can I just conclude? Yeah. So I'm saying we can even think of prosecutions being conducted by other private practitioners, senior members of the private bar. If there is some doubt as to the prosecution not being done properly, find a way of incorporating persons also eminent in the practice of criminal law from the private bar. Why don't we change the law?
In this matter right now, the people of this country are hungry for justice. The President himself appears to be quite hungry for justice in the matter of the bond scam.
Yeah.
a while back in this country, there were controversial institutions known as criminal justice commissions, which were established to prosecute the JVP insurgency. Do you think that in the case of this bond scam, in order to swiftly and speedily deliver justice to the Republic and the people, that the President should seriously consider establishing criminal justice commissions with punitive powers?
Well, I don't know whether establishing criminal justice commissions themselves, unless, of course, you see the Presidential Commission Inquiry Act and the Commission Inquiry Act, Nadeem, will end you back in the same sort of commission report that you had, which doesn't have teeth. The commissions of inquiry can...
But the Criminal Justice Commission has...
So you're trying to go one step further. But I don't know whether His Excellency the President ought to go just down that lane, because now they're discussing special courts now. They're discussing establishing of 3 further courts, 3 judges sitting, trial day to day, right? Now these things can, without just throwing them off on political platforms, the election coming up on the 10th, try and do it soon. Get it out in the open and say, well, it doesn't take long to amend laws. It doesn't take, ages these days. It's all available on the internet. How other countries utilize these systems are available on the internet. I'm not saying cut and paste it. Take it down. Give some commissions to, if you don't have enough officers in the AG's department, get some other practitioners involved. Hey, I want this law drafted soon. Can I have a draft? And get it going. People want, as you very correctly, people want to see something happening. We are talking and talking and talking ad nauseum of what we can do and what is not being done. When all we see are just discussion. NATO, no action, talk only.
Mr. Varakurunsu, do you think it's as simple as what Mr. Varakurunsu is saying? Just go out there, make some laws, amend them, and let's start.
I never said it's simple. I said it can be done.
It can be done. So,
it is so simple. I believe that the very important recommendation made by the Commission about related to these properties. Now, if you really go on the basis of this of the normal law, even if you seize the properties, that might take about 10 years until we really recover the money, because there will be appeals. Because whatever we say, they must, the court of law, we all are for that. The court of law must have the independence to even dismiss a case, and even after appropriation, they must have the right to appeal. So therefore, in order to avoid that, the Commission has recommended to follow what Mrs. Mahinda Rajapaksa brought in, Act number 43 of 2011, which is a revival of underperforming enterprises and underutilized assets Act. Now this Act has a speciality. They brought in number of, like the Hilton Hotel, like various other things, into the bill, into the Act, and seized them, took them over without any kind of court action. Then they went to the Supreme Court. Shirani Bandaranaike, after having gone through they challenged the bill. When they went to the Supreme Court held that it was justifiable. So therefore there is precedent. Now it's a simple thing. 2 judges of the Supreme Court have recommended the same thing. We have to only get the assets of all the assets that we think is the result of this fraud, and then bring them in a bill and pass it in the Parliament, and then seize them within a matter of days.
Mr. Gunasekara, how genuine is those of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, the Janata Vimukti Peramuna, the Tamil National Alliance, to get something like this passed in Parliament? There should be all 224 members.
They don't, because they have to support. But you all have made such a
noise. Substantial section of the UNP.
I mean, even the UNP will support, because the Prime Minister says we are only trying to recover the money. So that is the money. That money can be recovered without any action, without any court action.
Mr. Gunasekara, in your opinion, where did the Prime Minister go wrong?
That is the question that I cannot understand. What is the inference that you can draw from President's today's speech?
Yeah. So where did he go wrong?
Were you listening to the President's speech?
I was.
He says, he is asking, he mentioned by name. Ranil Wickremesinghe, the Prime Minister, you must help me in bringing all these people to book.
Yeah, that's right.
Single give it. He read that. Without that known. Where Prime Minister? What do you what are the inference that you have? I don't want to comment, but you draw the inference.
අගමැතිතුමාට අවස්ථාවක් තිබ්බේ නැහැ මුකුත් කියන්න ඒ ගැන. So but the question is very simple, Mr. Gunasekara.
So they have recommended, and if they had to bring a I think people like Krishmal can help to draft this act, and then they can bring this in Parliament.
But my question is very simple to you, Mr. Gunasekara. Very simple. They had a very good image. The Prime Minister had a good image up until 2015, unfortunately. He was known to be Mr. Clean, and now not clean anymore, for sure. Now, what happened to this man? Who were they trying to get money for? For what? What is the cause?
You know, the main, the idea behind the whole, this is the long story. I mean, what is the purpose of getting money through the bonds? And the main idea is, from the point of the economic point of view, to go to the capital market and get money from the private sector. That is the main purpose, right? Particularly in regard to long-term loan borrowings. But here, what they did was they used the government funds belonging to the state, used by the private sector, to buy the bonds.
Yeah.
Simple. I mean, this matter has not been brought up to the surface. I mean, the entire money belongs to the state.
Yeah.
So that is the difference between
Which means our money.
Yeah, our money.
Our own money.
Our money.
And that is why I say, I think I was telling, within 5 months, and a company which was floated with the 300 million capital in 2013, and it came into business in 2014, and within a matter of 5 months, they made such a image. I mean, the rate is over 500%. Have you ever heard of a business company making 500% rate of profit?
Yes, Charles.
That is why Karl Marx has said those whose rate of profit goes over 300%, it becomes a criminal.
Mr. Tennakoon, now assuming that these recommendations move to the next stage, now assume that there is an arrest warrant issued and more suspects are named, how will these dynamics play for the main two political parties because of the election, and how will the Podujana Peramuna, the Pohottu, exploit this to their advantage?
I think we were given a prohibitory warning by Samir when we started, don't talk about these things, so I don't know in that within those parameters how I have to comment on that thing. But then it is very clear, Charita, now in this forthcoming election, did you find a single politician talking in any platform without mentioning about the bond issue? So, the answer is very clear. Everybody has got the feeling now a huge crime has been committed and the people who have to be brought to books is not yet done, but the suspects have been identified. Therefore, the people who belong to that party should not be supported. That is what they say, in other words. So how, I do not know how the Podujana Peramuna or the Pohottu or some party that can gain out of this situation, because they themselves are in the same boat.
Mr. Nikon, now you have Basil Rajapaksa, who was expressing his views to the BBC, very clearly said that he's not willing to give up his citizenship in the US because he has children and his wife in the US.
Yes.
You have Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who is saying now openly, if he is to get the candidature of the 2020 presidential election, then he would give up his citizenship just 3 months prior only. So how genuine are these people for the country?
We have seen this now, Shamir, now. Immediately after the 2015 debacle, this man, this person, Basil Rajapaksa, packed his suitcases and went overseas. So what is there to prevent him doing another thing like this? The people, the voters of this country know this. They are playing a game. They have no responsibility towards this country. They will pack up their suitcases and vanish. So the country, I don't think the people can be fooled twice or thrice. They have been fooled many times before. They will not, they can't repeat this. So they are doing this, I mean their last dance. They have come back. Having gone, they have come back. And they will go back again. That's a game plan for them. But for the country, for the people, it's a matter of life and death. The only leader today in the forefront among these leaders who can stand on his feet and talk is the president.
Thank you very much. I need to go to Mr. Varankulsuri.
Is the president only.
Mr. Varankulsuri, in your opinion, do you agree with Mr. Tendakon when he says this is just a dance?
From the
we
time
saw the Prime Minister dancing
from the time we got independence, the only time I can recall a similar commission was appointed was during Mr. Bandaranaike's time, when Talgoda Pittiya Bribery Commission was appointed. That was the only time that the government appointed a commission to inquire into bribery allegations against their own ministers. So there also Bandaranaike died. Mr. Bandaranaike never implemented those recommendations. It had to go to the UNP.
So is this all
the first time? No, this is the first time that a president or a prime minister is initiating an inquiry purely because of the media coverage that was given and the public uproar. So don't you think we must really pay tribute to that man, the man who was prepared to against all odds, against all wishes. He appointed a commission, and with excellent two judges.
So I'm going to pose that question to Mr. Varankulsuri. Do you think all this is a dance? It's just a public gimmick? Is this what it is?
Most of it is, unfortunately, Shamir. Because why I say that is because since 2015 January, March this happened. All of us I think have been used as pawns. I say with the utmost respect to everyone. We are talking of a bond. This is 2018 January. We're talking of a bond. Where is the education policy that we wanted in 2015? A health policy where patients would get treated. A policy where people don't have to die out of malnutrition, children. All of that has been put aside. We are talking of a bond for 3 years. These fellows will be bonding and dancing for another 3 years and then come to us and say, sorry, give us some more time now to actually work and make policy for you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krishma Varankulsuri, for thoughts as well. We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's the final round. Stay connected. Stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. I start off the final round with Mr. Hemant Varankulsuri, President's Counsel. Mr. Varankulsuri, a few months ago you were optimistic about the Presidential Commission of Inquiry. Last show you were a bit pessimistic. You said we'll have to wait and see. I'm not really sure what's going to happen. But now you're optimistic again. Now, what's going to happen in the next few months?
I was very pessimistic.
Yes.
Knowing the political culture of this country, knowing how judges are influenced by people, I thought the manner in which the commission acted when two ministers, Kabir Hashim and Malik Samarikrama, gave evidence, why they did not permit the two states, the Appal River, to cross with them, and why they started questioning. Then thereafter, when the Prime Minister came, why was he sent questioning before? And why was again Attorney General brought in? So all those matters, I was very pessimistic. But I believe under those circumstances, and also another matter, very important, but in fact Faraz and I was trying to go to the Supreme Court, when the Kasun Palahena, when Arjuna Aloysius refused to testify. And that there was a ruling which permitted the ruling opposing took up the position that we can't force him to give evidence. But then with all that, the recommendations they have brought in, again, I always believed, I know Mr. Chitthisiri very well, he's an excellent judge, and the other judge, two members also, and they have produced an excellent report. I don't think anybody could expect to go beyond that. If you clearly concentrate on that and investigate, they have said these not all. You can investigate, you can find further evidence and prosecute.
Thank you very much.
I believe we are very, very fortunate to have these three judges, three commissioners, and the two excellent prosecutors in Dappulli and
Thank you very much.
And also
thank you very much.
Mr. Mirinda Gunatilaka.
Thank you very much, Mr. Varakurusuriya, President's Council. I'm still trying to figure out, are you optimistic or pessimistic? In very short terms.
Now
pessimistic or
I'm very pessimistic because I believe the President has finally taken this whole thing into his hand and is giving directions what should be done.
So you're optimistic about it?
Optimistic.
Are you
optimistic? Sorry.
Because when Mr. Varakurusuriya came to the studios, he had the mic shunned away, so we had to ask him to put the mics. He's excited, so he got the words wrong. So you're optimistic.
Mike got excited.
Thank you very much, Mr. Varakurusuriya, for your thoughts. I now move my attention to Mr. Krishmal Varakurusuriya, attorney at law, who is also a lawyer, coming from the rival college of Royal College, and then you have Thomian now speaking. Mr. Varakurusuriya, where do we stand now? You know, you had your colleague, learned friend, Mr. Hemant Varakurusuriya, saying that he's very optimistic now. But you said that it's all a public gimmick. It's a dance. They're trying to mislead the public again. But where are we standing right now as a nation? What does the future hold for us?
Yeah, Shamir, very quickly, as I said earlier, for 3 years we've been talking mostly about a bond report, a bond commission, and some fellow running off with our millions, whilst the patients are still on the floor of hospitals, not having beds. Children in the remote villages have to share a toilet, girls and boys, and the roofs are leaking. Even in our own judicial system, cases are dragging on for 8-10 years without people getting. So there, sovereign executive powers, sovereign judicial powers, and let's talk of the sovereign legislative power. People are shouting at each other in the house, well of the house, one saying "Kau the hora," and the other side punching faces, breaking noses, breaking teeth. So are people's sovereign legislative power, sovereign judicial power, sovereign executive power, is that being used for the people's benefit? Is a question I have to ask you, the people. While all this is happening, some fellows are taking millions of some EPF officer in some EPF department getting commission alone just for giving information in millions. Whilst on the other side of the country, a mother is jumping into the river with the children because she can't buy a glass of milk for the child. So you need to now ask yourself, is our sovereign power with us, or have you given it away and forgotten about it? And if you think that you have, then you need to do something about it. Get behind some way, in some manner, let's discuss, we don't have time, but to change the system. Voting another party in, you have now realized in January 2015, just voting another color in, whichever you belong to, is not going to serve your purpose. We all thought about it, we all got on the road, and this is not what Major Sean Anthony's of the St. Thomas's College class of 91 gave his life for today, that we buried him and came, in whose honor I wear this tie today. That is not why all the sons and daughters of this country gave their lives for, to make a future for you that we can develop upon, which we haven't done. If we haven't done it yet, and if so many thousand sons and daughters of this country have given their lives to give you that, you need to ask yourself the question, are we sleeping on our rights? Are we going to reassert that sovereign power back into our hands and make a change? We need to make that change.
Thank you very much. An emotional Mr. Krishmal Varakurusuriya, attorney at law. I now move attention to Mr. Rusiripala Thendakon, who is also a senior banker. Mr. Thendakon, where do we stand right now in all this? Do you think we'll see justice? Do you see at least a light end of this dark tunnel?
Yes, I see. But I have to state one thing. Law's delays in this particular instance is very, very critical, in the sense we are living in a digital era. A 1 day's delay, in a split second, a huge sum of money can be transferred just like this, from one end to the other end of the world. Therefore, Law's delays in this matter, without giving effect to the decisions and the recommendations that have been taken, will cause undue damages. Only one thing, that good light that we see is the president's announcement that he is going to take over the economy of the country is going to make a big difference. Why? Because if he is going to take over the economy of the country, he'll have to necessarily take over the finance function. He'll have to necessarily take over the control of the central bank. He will have to necessarily take control over the planning. If these things happen, we are doing away with several obstacles that are standing in the way, on the way for a decision-making process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Risipal Tennakon, senior banker as well as civil rights activist. Mr. D.W. Gunasekara, former member of parliament, strongman of the former regime, former chairman of COPE as well. You spoke about in Sinhalese a few words, so I thought I'll pose a question to you in Sinhalese at the end as well. Unuttakai munuttakai mung okkamekai. Nadda, Mr. Gunasekara.
You know, really this investigation, Bond investigation, opened the door. I'm happy that I was instrumental in conducting the preliminary investigation. You know, few people will know that this is the first time in the history of legislature, since 1931, a parliament entrusted to a committee to conduct an investigation. The normal procedure of the COPE in terms of the constitution is to examine audited accounts submitted by the Auditor General. That is the job of the COPE. This is the first time that the legislature, by name and through speaker, entrusted the job to me as COPE. So the COPE, before that, they had the Pittimana committee. And after 3 months, they produced nothing. The only recommendation was that Arjuna Mahendran is exonerated. And they say, we didn't have sufficient authority to go into this investigation. And they say, that is the end of it. That is why there's a big how in the parliament, and this was entrusted to me. It took me only 1 month. Only 1 month. We were working till 11, 12 midnight in the parliament throughout. And we produced a report. Unfortunately, we could not present it. If we had presented it, of course, things would have taken a different turn. And now that opened the door, I think, for this war on corruption.
Thank you very much.
He says, we have taken after we are on the path of a war, on this war path, after 59 years. Since SWR Bandaranaike, no head of the state, no head of the government ever conducted anything with as far as corruption is concerned.
Thank you very much.
Right. So this is the opening. I think
Very positive.
when Prime Minister made the statement on the floor of the House, when the second COPE report was introduced, I was watching the TV. I knew definitely he is trying to. He said, I have already sent it to AG. That means he wanted to send it to the dustbin.
Thank you very much.
On the following day, I made on the press conference, demanded a commission.
Yeah.
And specifically I mentioned at least 2 should be from the Supreme Court. If the President had not appointed 2 members of the Supreme Court, that commission would have gone for 6.
Thank you very much, Mr. D.W. Gunasekara, former chairman of COPE. It's nice to hear Mr. Gunasekara saying that the President has taken the step in the right direction as far as the bond controversy is concerned. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening. Mr. Krishmal Varanasuriya, attorney at law, Mr. Hemantha Varanasuriya, President's Counsel, Mr. D.W. Gunasekara, former chairman of COPE, as well as former member of Parliament and Minister. Thank you very much, Mr. Risipal Tennakon, senior banker. I have to commend you for not bringing out the political party that you're representing at the upcoming local government polls, because that was one of the requests that I made to you just prior to the program. So thank you very much for that. Looking forward to seeing you soon. Maybe in the local government, maybe you don't get the wrong end of the stick this time. So thank you very much, Mr. Tennakon, for joining us this evening. Thank you very much, Nadine, for joining us. Thank you very much, Charita, for joining us this evening. And of course, my good friend and also journalist Faraz Shaukat Ali for joining us this evening. So always a pleasure to have you on board. Tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Who's the guest, Faraz?
And it's another COPE chairman, Sunil Handunetty.
tomorrow morning, representing the JVP.
Yes, and
representing
I'd like
who?
to take his take on matters. We've had Mr. Dew, we've had Hemanta, and Newsline continues to break all the news.
Thank you very much, Faraz. However it happens right here on Face the Nation, you want to hear the story.
We wouldn't have come to the stage today as far as this industry is concerned if not for the press.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that.
Perhaps, Shamir, if you would permit me a few seconds, perhaps we should acknowledge the leadership and the courage of the chairman of our group, who's permitted us to have a free hand in reporting facts, and that's why we've continued to report so courageously without fear and favour, and we should be justifiably proud of what we've been able to do for the country.
Spot on. We as journalists come here and fearlessly pose questions because there's always someone who's guiding us, or someone who's telling us to do the right thing. So this is the future of Sri Lanka. We have to all unite together and make sure that we move in the right direction. So I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. This is from Abraham Lincoln. You can fool all the people some of the time and some of the people all the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time. And that is why hard times don't create heroes. It is during the hard times when the hero within us is revealed. Is there a hero? I'll leave it at that. Take care and good night.